Good morning and welcome to this Sunday morning, the Feast of Corpus Christi. Today we celebrate this great feast. It's really three feasts in one. It's the Feast of the Eucharistic Sacrifice, it's the Feast of the Sacrament of the Eucharist, and it's the Feast of the real presence of Jesus in the sacrament. I have wonderful childhood memories associated with this feast, such as street processions with the monstrance, long adoration sessions and other festivities associated with it. I remember being a little flower girl strewing petals before the Blessed Sacrament. There was a sort of sense of tribal Catholic identity which was reinforced by these celebrations. There was a Vietnamese Jesuit who spent 9 years in labour camps in Vietnam. He relates how he was finally able to say Mass when a fellow prisoner shared some of his smuggled supplies. That night, when the other prisoners were asleep, lying on the floor of my cell, I celebrated Mass with tears of joy. My altar was my blanket, my prison clothes, my vestments. But I felt myself that I was at the heart of humanity and the whole of creation. Today, in the Gospel reading, Jesus speaks of himself as the bread of life. He senses that the people want to emulate Moses, who arranged the manna to be given to their ancestors from heaven. This comparison with Moses is something Jesus, in some respects, refuses. The original manna was a gift from God to sustain the Israelites in their journey through the wilderness. This new bread from heaven is a gift from God in a far more remarkable way. Jesus describes the bread that he gives us as my flesh for the life of the world. In some respects, St. John's presentation of Jesus' promise of the Eucharist is one of the best proofs we have for the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. From Jesus' presentation, we certainly gather that we gather that Jesus really meant what he said. It was literally true, even if it meant losing some of his followers. In the Eucharist, believers encounter and receive the outpouring of divine love and a communication of life which is foreshadowed in the experience of the Israelites at the time of their desert wanderings. Anyone who eats this bread will live forever, and the bread that I shall give is flesh for the life of the world, Jesus said. He's not speaking of cannibalism, of course. Rather, the flesh he is speaking of refers to the offering of himself upon the cross, the altar of the cross. Thus, Jesus links what happened in the past with what he was going to accomplish on Calvary. Manna in the desert foreshadows the real food of life that Jesus would give us at the table of the Eucharist. Manna was food for the exodus from slavery, but Jesus is the food for the new exodus into freedom, liberation and wholeness. Our Bishop Philip this week announced that our churches will be opened in a limited way from next week. This is great news for Catholics. As Bishop Philip says, for Catholics, a church is not simply a place of worship. It is the place where Jesus Christ is really and truly present among his people, feeding and healing them in the sacraments, instructing them with his word and caring for them with his love. Whenever we enter a Catholic church, we come to meet Christ truly present amongst us, reserved in the tabernacle. So many visitors at our priory comment that when they come to our chapel, they feel a presence that sits with them and enters into their hearts and comforts and heals them. This is the unique experience of entering a Catholic church. Jesus is truly present in the tabernacle. When we come to a church where Jesus is present, we talk to our God, we praise him, we adore him, we seek his consolation, knowing that he is there, present amongst us. St. John Vianney famously related the story of a man who came into a church every day and gazed upon the tabernacle. The man said, He gazes at me and I gaze at him. It's almost like we come to bathe in his presence and soak up this presence into our lives. No words are necessary. We just need to be still in his presence. O sacrament most holy, O sacrament divine, all praise and all thanksgiving be every moment thine.